The living room shook with a cry as 7-year-old Amara Johnson, a frail black girl with a weak heart, pushed the cup away and sobbed. "Stepmom, this isn't my medicine." Her thin chest rose and fell rapidly, panic flashing in her wide brown eyes. The chandelier light glinted off the glass in her trembling hands as she tried to shove it aside. Rebecca, the stepmother, leaned over her with a cold smile that never reached her eyes. Her manicured fingers dug into Amara's chin, tilting it upward. "Stop your whining," she hissed. "It's just your medicine. Drink it." Amara's lips quivered. She knew her medicine, the bitter tang that always left her throat raw. This tasted wrong. Too sweet, almost like candy, but heavy on her chest. She shook her head violently, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Please, I can't breathe right when I drink this. It isn't the same." Rebecca's eyes hardened. "Do you think I care about your little opinions?" she sneered. She forced the glass against Amara's lips, tilting it so the liquid spilled inside her mouth. Amara choked, coughing violently, some of the water spilling down her dress as she struggled. "Stop fighting me," Rebecca snapped, her voice rising with venom. "If you don't drink this, you'll die anyway." Amara's sobs filled the room, echoing off the walls like a fragile plea. She tried to twist away, but her weakened body betrayed her. Each gulp made her chest ache sharper, her breaths shallow, her tiny fingers clawing at the air for mercy. And then, the front door burst open. The heavy oak door slammed against the wall as Marcus Johnson, Amara's father, strode inside. His tailored coat was still dusted with snow from the airport, his shoes carrying the weight of long travel. But when his eyes fell on the scene before him, his fragile daughter gasping as Rebecca forced liquid past her lips, he froze. For one split second, time stood still. The cup hovered mid-air in Rebecca's hand, her face twisted in shock. Amara's wide eyes locked on her father, desperate, pleading. "Daddy," she choked, her voice breaking. "Help me, please." The word "daddy" cut through Marcus like a blade. He dropped his suitcase instantly, the leather bag crashing against the floor. His chest tightened, fury igniting in his veins as he surged forward. "What the hell are you doing to my daughter?" His voice thundered across the room, sharper than any fire. Rebecca staggered back, the glass slipping from her hand and shattering on the hardwood floor. I was just giving her medicine," she stammered, her face pale but her words desperate. "Medicine?" Marcus spat, kneeling to cradle Amara in his arms. "This doesn't look like medicine. She's choking." He pressed her gently against his chest, feeling the frantic rise and fall of her small ribcage. "Breathe, baby. Daddy's here." Amara clung to him weakly, tears still streaming down her face. "It's not my medicine," she whispered hoarsely, her voice barely audible. "She changed it. She made me drink something else." Marcus's jaw tightened, rage simmering beneath the surface. His eyes shot back to Rebecca, who stood frozen, her lips parting and closing as if searching for a lie that would save her. "Changed it," Marcus repeated slowly, his voice cold and deadly calm. "What did you give her?" Rebecca's face twitched. "She's confused. Sick children imagine things." "Enough!" Marcus roared, his fist slamming against the table so hard that the frame rattled. "I'll call the doctor right now. If she's been poisoned because of you..." His voice trailed off, thick with barely contained fury. Rebecca's eyes darted to the broken glass on the floor, the last drops of liquid glistening in the light. Panic flickered in her gaze, but she forced a laugh, brittle and unconvincing. "It was just water. She needs to stay hydrated, doesn't she?" "Water?" Marcus's tone dripped with disbelief. He lifted Amara gently, her small frame limp in his arms. "You gave my heartsick daughter water instead of her prescribed medication? Do you know what that could do to her?" Amara buried her face in his chest, her small voice muffled. "She hides my real medicine, Daddy. I told her, but she wouldn't listen. She said if I drink it, maybe I'll die faster." The room went silent. Marcus's heart stopped. His grip on his daughter tightened as his gaze snapped back to Rebecca. The woman's mask finally cracked, her eyes narrowing as fear and fury battled across her face. "Is that true?" Marcus demanded, his voice trembling with rage. Tell me right now, what have you done? Rebecca said nothing, and in that silence, Marcus knew. Marcus's arms tightened around his daughter, feeling the fragile beat of her heart beneath his hand. Every rise and fall of her chest was shallow, strained. He brushed the damp curls from her forehead, whispering with a trembling voice, You're safe, Amara. Daddy's here. Just hold on. Rebecca stood frozen, her hands shaking, her mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. Marcus, you don't understand, she stammered, her words tumbling in desperation. She's exaggerating. She's sick. She imagines things. Imagines? Marcus snapped, his voice sharp as glass. He rose to his full height, still cradling Amara against his chest. His eyes blazed with fury, the kind that could set fire to the air around him. She imagined the taste of her medicine changing. She imagined you forcing water down her throat. Rebecca's face paled. I was just trying to help. You were gone so long and her medication is complicated. I must have made a mistake. Marcus's jaw tightened. He set Amara gently on the couch, kneeling to stroke her cheek. Breathe slowly, baby, he whispered. Then he stood and turned back to Rebecca. A mistake? His voice rose with each word. You've lived in this house for 2 years. You know her prescriptions. You've watched me give them to her countless times. You don't make a mistake with a child's heart medicine. Amara coughed weakly, reaching a trembling hand toward her father. Daddy. He rushed back to her side, gripping her hand. I'm here, sweetheart. His gaze softened as he leaned close. Tell me what happened. Her lips quivered, her small voice rasping like dry leaves. She hides my pills. She gives me that water instead. I told her it wasn't right. She said if I drink it, maybe I'll die faster and then she'll be free. The room went deathly still. Marcus's breath caught in his throat. He stared at his daughter, then slowly lifted his gaze back to Rebecca. His face was carved in stone, every muscle trembling with barely restrained rage. She said what? Rebecca's mask finally shattered. She's lying, she shrieked. Children lie when they don't get their way. You're going to believe her over me? Marcus stepped forward, towering over her. His voice was low, dangerous. Over you? I'd believe the sound of her heartbeat before I'd believe a single word that leaves your mouth. Rebecca's back hit the wall as she retreated, her breathing ragged. Marcus, listen to me. If you call a doctor, they won't find anything wrong. It's just water. She'll be fine. This doesn't have to turn into a scandal. Marcus's hand shot out, slamming against the wall beside her head. She flinched, her eyes wide with fear. You think I care about scandal? He growled. You tried to kill my daughter. Behind him, Amara whimpered softly, curling into the blanket on the couch. Daddy, I don't want her near me anymore. Please. He turned his head just enough to meet her gaze, his expression softening for a moment. She won't touch you again. I promise. Then his eyes snapped back to Rebecca, hard as steel. You're finished here. From this moment, you no longer belong in this house, in this family, in our lives. I'll make sure you answer for what you've done. Rebecca trembled, her lips quivering. You can't prove anything, she whispered, but the words sounded hollow even to her own ears. Marcus bent closer, his voice deadly calm. Oh, I will. And when the doctors test that water you forced down her throat, they'll see exactly what you've done. Rebecca's breath hitched, her eyes darted toward the shattered glass on the floor, then back to Marcus. For the first time, fear truly took root in her face. Marcus returned to Amara, lifting her gently into his arms again. We're going to the hospital right now, he said firmly. And when the truth comes out, you'll never hurt her again. Rebecca's voice cracked, desperation spilling from her like poison. Marcus, please, you don't understand. I needed the money. But the moment the word money left her lips, Marcus froze. His eyes narrowed. Money? And in that instant he understood. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't ignorance. This was planned, cold, calculated. Rebecca's face collapsed into tears, but they were not tears of remorse. They were tears of a woman caught, her mask slipping off completely. Marcus's rage was no longer fire. It was ice. He held Amara close, his heart pounding with one truth. He had nearly lost his daughter, not to fate, not to illness, but to the greed of the woman he had trusted. And now, there would be no forgiveness. The hospital room smelled of antiseptic and beeping machines. 7-year-old Amara lay in the bed, her tiny chest rising and falling under the white sheets. Electrodes dotted her skin, wires leading to monitors that traced the rhythm of her fragile heart. Marcus sat at her side, his hand clasping hers. His thumb brushed the back of her small palm, a silent promise. I won't let you go. His eyes, bloodshot from anger and worry, never left her face. A nurse entered with a tray of vials. Behind her, a physician in a crisp white coat carried the shattered glass bottle that Marcus had brought from the house. Mr. Johnson, the doctor said gravely. You said this is what she was given tonight. Marcus nodded tightly. Yes, my wife. His throat caught on the word. She claimed it was Amara's medicine, but my daughter said otherwise. The doctor's expression darkened. We'll run a quick analysis. He handed the vial to the nurse, who disappeared into the adjoining lab. The room felt colder with every passing minute. Amara stirred weakly, her eyes fluttering open. Daddy, she whispered, her voice faint. Marcus leaned closer, his face softening. I'm here, sweetheart. You're safe now. Tears slipped from the corners of her eyes. I told her it wasn't my medicine. I told her. Her voice broke into sobs. Marcus bent to kiss her forehead. And you were right. I believe you, Amara. Always. Minutes later, the nurse returned, holding a sheet of paper with printed results. She whispered to the doctor, who read it with narrowing eyes. Then he looked at Marcus, his voice firm and edged with disbelief. This wasn't medicine. It was just water, with added sugar, no active ingredients. None. Marcus's stomach twisted. So she's been without her medication? The doctor nodded grimly. Yes, without it, her heart condition would deteriorate rapidly. That explains the worsening symptoms you described. The fatigue, the shortness of breath, the fainting spells. It was deliberate substitution. Deliberate. The word rang in Marcus's ears like a hammer blow. Amara whimpered softly, hearing enough to understand. She wanted me to die, she whispered, her little hands clutching the sheets. Marcus's chest ached at her words. He pulled her gently into his arms, mindful of the wires and tubes. Never again, he swore, his voice shaking with rage. She'll never come near you again. In the hospital lobby, Rebecca sat rigid between two officers. Her hands were cuffed, her once perfect hair disheveled. She had begged Marcus not to call the police, had screamed that it was all a mistake, but the broken glass and the test results told a different story. One officer leaned down. You understand the charges, ma'am. Attempted child endangerment at minimum, possibly attempted homicide, depending on further investigation. Rebecca's face twisted. You can't prove intent. It was just water. Just water. But the officer's eyes were cold. Your stepdaughter's testimony says otherwise, and the motive is clear. Life insurance policy in your name, isn't it? Rebecca's mouth snapped shut. Marcus approached then, his face carved with fury. He stood inches from her, his voice low and dangerous. You thought you could kill my daughter for money. You thought no one would notice. But she's stronger than you, and I will make sure you never see her again except from behind bars. Rebecca's face flushed, her mask of control slipping into a snarl. She's ruined everything, she spat, her voice venomous. That weak little brat. Enough! Marcus's roar echoed through the lobby. Every head turned. You've said enough. The officers dragged her to her feet. Her protests echoed down the hall, but no one listened. For the first time, her lies had no audience. Back upstairs, Marcus returned to Amara's bedside. The doctor adjusted her monitors, then turned to him. She's stable now, but she'll need her real medication immediately. We've arranged a new prescription and secure delivery. From now on, no one touches her medicine except medical staff. Marcus exhaled, relief flooding his chest. He brushed a kiss against Amara's hair. You hear that, sweetheart? No more fake medicine. Only the real thing. Amara's lips curled into the faintest smile. Because you came back, she whispered. Because you saw. Marcus's heart broke and healed all at once. He held her close, whispering into her curls, "I'll always see you, Amara. Always." And in that sterile hospital room, amid the quiet hum of machines, Justice began to breathe. The interrogation room was stark and cold. A single light hung overhead, casting harsh shadows across Rebecca's face. Her hands were cuffed to the table, her once manicured nails chipped, her perfect poise shattered. Two detectives sat opposite her. One opened a folder, spreading documents across the table. "Rebecca Carter," he began evenly, "stepdaughter of Amara Johnson, currently facing charges of child endangerment with intent to cause serious harm. Do you understand these charges?" Rebecca scoffed, though her voice cracked. "I didn't harm her. It was just water. She's dramatic, always has been. You're all making a fuss over nothing." The detective slid one paper closer, his eyes narrowing. "Nothing. Then why do we have proof you took out a life insurance policy on your husband's daughter 3 months ago, without his knowledge?" Rebecca froze, her mask slipping. "That's not possible," she stammered. He signed it. He must have forgotten." "Really?" The detective leaned forward, his tone razor-sharp. "Because we have your forged signature here. And the insurance company flagged it the moment we asked. You thought no one would notice, didn't you?" Her lips parted, but no sound came. Meanwhile, in the hospital waiting room, Marcus sat with his head in his hands. His chest ached, not from exhaustion, but from rage that seemed endless. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Amara's face, tears streaking her cheeks, crying, "This isn't my medicine." The door opened, and one of the detectives entered. "Mr. Johnson," he said quietly, "we've confirmed our suspicions. Your wife took out a fraudulent life insurance policy in Amara's name. If your daughter had died, she stood to collect a very large sum of money." Marcus's fists clenched, his knuckles turned white. "So it was never about care, never about family. It was about money all along." The detective nodded. "We're pursuing attempted homicide charges. The substitution of her medication was deliberate. We'll also be investigating her previous financial dealings. It seems she has a history." Marcus stood, his tall frame trembling with fury. "Put her away for life," he growled. "Because if she ever walks free again, she'll try to finish what she started." Back in the interrogation room, Rebecca's composure crumbled further. Sweat dripped down her temples. "Fine," she snapped. "Yes, I changed her medicine, but I didn't think she'd die so soon. I only wanted more time. The money wasn't enough yet. Marcus spends everything on her doctors, her treatments, her fragile little life." The detective's jaw tightened. "So you thought ending her life would solve your problems?" Rebecca sneered bitterly, her voice dripping with venom. "She was never mine. She was a burden. A sick little girl sucking up all the attention, all the money. I was supposed to be the wife, the center of his world, but she stood in my way every single day. Don't you see? She ruined everything." Silence hung heavy in the room. Then the detective spoke, his tone cold. "No, you ruined yourself." He stood, gathering the papers. "We have everything we need. Your confession, the evidence, the motive. This is the end for you, Rebecca Carter." Her eyes widened in panic. She lunged forward, the cuffs rattling. "Wait! You don't understand. He'll never forgive me. He'll turn Amara against me forever." The detective leaned down, his eyes hard as steel. "He already has. And Amara doesn't need your forgiveness. She needs justice." Outside the station, news of the case spread like wildfire. Headlines screamed across newspapers and TV screens. Stepmother accused of poison plot against sick child. Millionaire's daughter saved after shocking betrayal. Life insurance murder scheme foiled. Public outrage swelled. Strangers gathered outside the courthouse, holding signs that read, "Justice for Amara." Social media exploded with fury, voices demanding the harshest punishment for Rebecca. Inside the hospital, Marcus scrolled through the headlines on his phone. Each word made his heart ache. He looked over at Amara, sleeping peacefully at last, her tiny frame nestled against the pillows. He whispered to himself, "No matter what happens, I'll protect you. You'll never be alone again." And for the first time in days, A fragile sense of peace settled over him. The worst was over. But the road ahead, justice, healing, rebuilding, had only just begun. The courthouse was overflowing. Reporters swarmed the marble steps, their voices echoing as cameras flashed. The story of Amara Johnson, the frail little black girl whose own stepmother had tried to take her life for money, had spread like fire. The city demanded justice, and today, they would see it delivered. Inside the courtroom, Marcus sat in the front row with Amara nestled against his side. She wore a pale blue dress, her curls tied neatly with a ribbon, her small hands folded nervously in her lap. Though she tried to be brave, her wide eyes darted around the room, her chest rising and falling too quickly. Marcus draped an arm protectively around her, his heart aching at every tremor of fear she showed. Across the aisle sat Rebecca. The once flawless woman now looked haggard and brittle, her designer clothes hanging loose, her hair limp. The chains around her wrists clinked softly as she shifted, her lips pressed tight in fury. "All rise," the bailiff announced. The judge entered, her gavel striking the wood sharply. Silence fell. The prosecutor wasted no time. He stepped forward, holding a thick folder of evidence. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," he began, his voice steady, "this is not a case of neglect or misunderstanding. This is a case of deliberate cruelty, a calculated attempt to profit from the suffering of a child." He held up the lab results. This report confirms that Amara Johnson's life-saving heart medication was replaced with nothing more than sugar water. For weeks, this child's health declined while her stepmother forced her to consume the substitute, knowing full well the consequences. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Amara flinched, burying her face in Marcus's arm. The prosecutor continued, his voice rising. "And why? For money. A life insurance policy fraudulently signed by the defendant, which would have paid out upon Amara's death. She was not only betrayed as a child, she was betrayed as a daughter." Then came the hardest part. Amara was called to testify. Marcus's heart twisted as he watched his daughter climb timidly into the witness chair. Her feet dangled far above the ground, her small hands clutching the sides of the seat. "Amara," the prosecutor said gently, "can you tell the jury what happened when your stepmother gave you the medicine?" Her voice trembled, but she spoke. "It didn't taste like my medicine. It was sweet. It made my chest hurt. I told her it wasn't right, but she held my face and made me drink it anyway." Tears welled in her eyes. I begged her to stop. I said I couldn't breathe, but she just laughed. She said maybe I'd die faster and then she'd be free. The courtroom went still. Jurors' faces hardened, some covering their mouths in shock. Rebecca leapt from her seat. "She's lying!" she screamed, her face twisted in rage. "She always hated me." The judge's gavel cracked against the wood. "Order! Mrs. Carter, sit down or be removed." But it was too late. Her outburst only proved what the jury had already begun to believe. The child was telling the truth. Witnesses followed. Neighbors described the night Marcus had returned, how they had heard Amara's cries echo through the walls. Doctors testified about the test results, explaining how dangerous the substitution had been. Even the insurance company's representative confirmed the fraudulent policy, signed with Rebecca's forged signature. Finally, the defense made its attempt. Rebecca's lawyer argued she had been overwhelmed, that it was negligence, not malice. But her own words in the interrogation, her confession about money, her bitterness toward Amara, hung in the air like a noose. The prosecutor closed with a single devastating line. No child should ever have to beg for her life from the very person meant to protect her. That is the crime before you. Hours later, the jury returned. The foreman stood, his voice firm. "On the charges of fraud, neglect, and attempted homicide, we find the defendant guilty on all counts." Rebecca's knees buckled. She collapsed back into her chair, her face pale, her mouth opening in a soundless scream. The judge's gavel struck once more. Sentenced to life imprisonment, without the possibility of parole. The courtroom erupted. Some gasped in shock, others applauded. Marcus simply pulled Amara into his arms, holding her tightly as tears streamed down his face. "You're safe now," he whispered into her curls. Forever safe. Amara clung to him, her small voice muffled against his chest. She can't hurt me anymore? Never again, Marcus promised. Never. And for the first time since her mother's death, Amara truly believed it. That night, back at home, Marcus tucked her into bed. She held her locket close, the one that carried her mother's picture. Daddy? She asked softly. Yes, sweetheart. Does this mean I can start dreaming again? Marcus's throat tightened. He kissed her forehead gently. Yes, Amara. Dream as much as you want, because the future is yours now. Her eyes fluttered shut, her breathing steady, her face finally at peace. And Marcus sat beside her, his heart swelling with gratitude. Justice had been served. His daughter had been saved, and their lives, though scarred by betrayal, were ready to begin anew. The verdict had been read, the sentence declared. Rebecca Carter was no longer a stepmother, no longer a wife, only a prisoner. Yet outside the courthouse, the echoes of her crime continued to ripple across the city. Crowds gathered, holding signs with Amara's name scrawled in bold letters. Justice for Amara. Children deserve safety. No more monsters in disguise. News anchors stood on every corner, their voices carrying the story to every television screen and radio station. For Marcus, it was surreal. One day his private pain had been confined within the walls of his mansion. The next, the world knew his daughter's suffering, and strangers shouted in her defense. But inside the hospital, none of that mattered. Amara sat upright in bed, her small frame wrapped in a fluffy blanket. Nurses bustled around, checking monitors, adjusting IV lines, but she barely noticed them. Her eyes were fixed on the doorway, where Marcus appeared carrying a small gift bag. Daddy, she called softly, her voice still weak but full of life. He crossed the room in a few strides, kneeling at her side. From the bag he pulled out a stuffed bear, its fur soft and golden. This is for you, he said gently. He'll stay with you when I can't. Her face lit up. She hugged the bear tightly, whispering, I'll name him Courage. Marcus's throat tightened. That's perfect, sweetheart, because that's what you are. Over the following weeks, life began to shift. Letters poured in from strangers, children sending drawings, parents sending prayers, entire classrooms writing messages of hope. Volunteers offered support, charities pledged medical assistance. Amara's name had become a symbol, her story a call for change. One afternoon, Marcus read one of the letters aloud. It says, Dear Amara, you are stronger than the fire, stronger than the storm. Don't ever forget that. Amara smiled shyly. They believe in me. Of course they do, Marcus said, smoothing her curls, because you showed them what it means to be brave. Meanwhile, Marcus took steps to secure their future. He sold the house where Rebecca's cruelty had played out, vowing never to let Amara walk those halls again. Instead, he purchased a new home near the city's edge, sunlight streaming through tall windows, gardens bursting with flowers. Every room was painted in colors Amara chose herself. This one, she said, pointing to a soft yellow. It feels like sunshine. And for the first time, her laughter filled the walls of a house built not with secrets, but with love. At the hospital's final checkup, the doctor smiled warmly. Her heart is still fragile, but with the right medication, real medication. Her prognosis looks brighter than ever. She's strong. Marcus exhaled in relief. He turned to Amara, squeezing her hand. You hear that? Strong. Just like I've always known. Amara grinned, her eyes sparkling. Stronger than Rebecca ever thought. Marcus chuckled, but his voice softened. She's gone, Amara. She can't touch you again. And we don't even need to say her name anymore. From now on, it's just us. Amara nodded. Us. That evening, Marcus carried his daughter into their new home for the first time. The sun was setting, painting the sky in hues of gold and pink. He set her gently on the couch where she clutched Courage the bear, her eyes wide with wonder at the bright new space. Daddy? She asked, her voice small but steady. Yes, sweetheart. Does this mean I can finally stop being afraid? Marcus's eyes glistened as he knelt beside her. Yes. From now on, the only thing you need to be is happy. She leaned against him, her breathing calm, her face at peace. For the first time, fear did not lurk in the corners of her mind. Only love, safety, and the promise of a future untarnished by betrayal. And so, the little black girl who once cried, "This isn't my medicine," was no longer a victim. She was a survivor. She was free. The world moved on, but for Marcus and Amara, life was only just beginning again. Weeks after the trial, Rebecca's name faded from the headlines, replaced by new scandals, new stories. But the one thing that did not fade was Amara's story. People continued to speak her name with reverence. Schools invited Marcus to share their journey. Community groups raised money for children's hospitals in Amara's honor. And charities reached out, inspired by the little girl who had bravely cried, "This isn't my medicine." Yet, within the walls of their new home, Marcus shielded Amara from most of it. She needed peace, not endless retellings of her pain. The house itself felt alive with warmth. The living room glowed with soft light, the scent of fresh flowers drifting in through open windows. In Amara's bedroom, sunlight spilled across walls painted her favorite yellow, shelves filled with storybooks, dolls, and the stuffed bear she had named Courage. Every night, Marcus tucked her in and sat beside her until her breathing slowed. The nightmares still came, but they grew fewer. And when they did, he was there, always there. "Daddy?" she whispered one night, her voice drowsy. "Yes, sweetheart? Do you think Mommy can see me now?" Marcus's chest tightened. He brushed her curls from her forehead. "Yes, she sees you every day, and she's so proud of how brave you are." Amara smiled faintly, clutching courage. "Then I'm not scared anymore." The biggest shift came in spring, when Marcus enrolled her in a new school. At first, Amara's steps were hesitant as she clutched his hand, her chest tight with nerves. The other children looked at her, whispered, pointed. She expected the cruelty she had always known. But then one little girl walked up, holding out a flower crown. "You're Amara, right? The one from TV? My mom says you're a hero." Amara's eyes widened. "Me? A hero?" The girl nodded firmly. "You didn't give up. That makes you braver than anyone." For the first time, Amara's laughter rang out in the schoolyard. At home, Marcus worked tirelessly to ensure her health. The best doctors oversaw her treatment. A professor of cardiology, an old friend Marcus had flown in during the chaos, visited often, helping to tailor her medications and lifestyle. "She's doing better than anyone expected," the professor said with a smile. "Her strength is remarkable. With the right care, she can live a long, full life." Amara beamed at Marcus when she heard it. "See, Daddy? I told you I'm stronger than I look." He hugged her tightly, his voice breaking. "You're stronger than anyone I know." As months turned to a year, the bond between father and daughter deepened. Marcus, once consumed by business deals and endless travel, now devoted every spare moment to her. He read her bedtime stories, braided her curls on school mornings, and cheered the loudest at every small achievement. Amara, in turn, blossomed. Her cheeks grew rosy, her laughter brighter. The shadow of Rebecca's cruelty faded into memory. Yet she never forgot what she had endured. One evening she sat in the garden, writing in a small notebook. When Marcus asked what it was, she smiled shyly. "It's my story," she said, "so no one forgets what happened. Maybe one day another little girl who feels scared will read it and know she's not alone." Marcus's heart swelled with pride. "Then your story will save others, just like you were saved." The city held a charity gala in Amara's honor that summer. Lights sparkled overhead, music filled the hall, and people from every walk of life gathered. Amara wore a white dress that made her look like a ray of light. She stood nervously at the podium, her small hands gripping the microphone. "Hi," she began, her voice trembling. "My name is Amara. Some of you know me as the girl from the news. But I'm not just the girl who was almost hurt. I'm the girl who lived. The girl who's learning to be brave. And I want every child out there to know, you don't have to be afraid forever. There are people who will fight for you. There are people who will love you." The room erupted in applause. Marcus, standing at the edge of the stage, wiped tears from his eyes. That night, as the gala ended, Marcus carried Amara to the car, her head resting on his shoulder. She whispered sleepily, "Daddy, do you think we'll always be okay now?" He kissed her forehead, his voice steady. "Yes, sweetheart. We've been through fire, lies, and betrayal. But now, it's just us, and we'll always be okay." As the city lights blurred past the car windows, Amara drifted into sleep, her heart steady, her face peaceful. And so the little black girl who once cried, "This isn't my medicine," had found not only justice, but love, safety, and hope. She was no longer the child who feared every breath. She was the child who proved that even in the face of betrayal, courage can rise. And her story, written in tears and strength and unbreakable love, would shine as a light for others forever.